Hi, welcome back. In this part, we're going to be making this actually quite simple object, this bed. And I'm just working off a 3/4 reference. So I don't have a detailed blueprint, so I couldn't tell you exactly how high it is, although it looks to be about 2 meters. I am going to need, however, a good starting point. And for me, a good starting point when you're trying to figure out how big a bed is the mattress, because we know a king-size mattress would be around 180 by 2 meters. So I can come in and actually oversize this. So I'm going to make it 2 meters by 240. That's because the mattress will go in the middle, and the extra geometry, the extra size, will allow me to build the bed around it. So again, I'm just going to scale this till it matches the reference just by eye. So I guess that bottom part be around this thick. And a couple of things I notice on this is that it's got a lip that runs all the way around it, and also this leg is not flush with this surface. So let's start to cut in some basic edge loops here to make the first sort of shape. So let's put this one here for the lip, and let's cut in some legs. Okay, so if you want, you can go into the 4-view and obviously make these exactly square. For me, I'm going to eyeball it in. I go in the principle that it wouldn't actually be that perfect in the real world. And if you look here, these are pretty damn close. But if you're a stickler for that kind of thing, you can always hop in the 4-view. All right, the first thing I want to do is pull the lip out. So let's select the faces. So F10, click this one, double click this one, and you'll select the entire edge loop. Okay, so you can get your tutorial shelf through the extrusion, or you can shift right click for the marking menu and just extrude face. And I'm going to extrude this to a thickness of, let's say, 4. Let's try that. Okay, and that gives me a little lip around. Kind of perfect, really. All right, so now we've got the lip. What we need to do is recess this part so the legs stick out. So if I just extrude this backwards, we're going to run into all sorts of problems. So we want those legs to be a bit forward, like so. But if we go backwards, we're left with extra faces here. If we delete the extra faces here, so delete and delete, we can then bridge across the gap. But that's not really going to work, because that will leave us with some n-gons, polygons with more than 4 sides, and it will just leave us with some generally bad geometry in this area. So instead of extruding backwards, what I'm going to do is take these two, press G to extrude, and I'm going to extrude forwards. So I'm going to give these a thickness of 2. That way, we still create that lip, but without any problems with the geometry, really. Okay, so just do that for all 4 of what will become the legs. Let's get these ones at the back. Alright, so now we create this sort of recessed look without any problems that are going to come back to bite us on the backside later on. So I'm going to take this center square here, because this will be where the actual mattress goes. So we're going to just recess this downwards, and I'll just nip into the 4-view to make sure I don't bisect the floor. So that's about right. There we go. Okay, so now we've got sort of the basic main container for the mattress. Let's get on with putting some legs on it. So in this case, for the bottom legs, I'm going to select all 3 of these faces. I'm going to extrude downwards to about 20 centimeters. It looks to be about 20 centimeters to me on the reference, and it can be easily adjusted later on. So okay, and G once again, just to repeat the last command, which in our case was extrude. 20 centimeters. Let's get the back ones in. 1, 2, and 3. G down 20 centimeters. And the same last one. G and down. Whoops, I've accidentally got all of them selected, so I'll have to come back, deselect those, and pay a bit more careful attention to what it is I'm doing. And G and down 20. Alright, so we're kind of getting there with the basic construction of this thing. As I said, it is quite a simple object we're doing right now, and I want a headboard. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these three faces here, 1, 2 and 3, and pull them out to make my headboard. And again, let's just see if that headboard is big enough. I don't think it is. Maybe more like so. Perfect. Okay, again, we got just the one extrusion, and if we look at the reference, we can see it's also got a little lip on it. So in here with this thing, that will create our lip, and then select the faces, and again extrude face, and let's give it a thickness of maybe 2.5. Okay, so that just puts a little lip on the back of the headboard too. Lovely. And now we can start extruding out the posts. So face mode once again, and let's grab these two at the same time, and now I can extrude them up. And because I know I want my bed to be around 2 meters tall, these should be at around 180. Our legs are sort of 120. If these are 180, then that just simply means that without this part the bed will be about 2 meters, and with this part maybe 2 meters 10 centimeters, which is absolutely fine for me. So I'm going to come in and do the same with the back two. Just extrude them up. And the reason I didn't do them all at the same time is because obviously if I extruded these to 180, we'd have a situation with this going on, which is obviously no good. So I'm going to manually get them in line, and then I'll show you how to get them identical. So let's just pull these down until they're in about the same position. Okay, so that's pretty spot on for the front and back as far as height is concerned. If you're a bit of a stickler, you can come in here, select the vertex, select them all and scale them inwards. Okay, and this will put all 4 legs at exactly the same height. Alright, so now we've got everything exactly the same height. There's one other thing that I noticed from the reference though, that these legs are slightly tapered towards the top, at least it appears to me. So we could come in here and go to face mode and select this face and scale it inwards and do the same and the same and the same. The problem with that is it's a pain, and you're never going to get them all precisely the same size. So, and in this case we're only doing 4, but if you could imagine if you were having to do sort of 40 scaling operations at once, then it becomes a serious pain. So if you select all 4 and go edit mesh, transform component, this will let me scale this one like it's on its local axis, and these ones will simply copy it. So if I was to go like so, as you can see, they all scale together now, but on the local axis. If I don't use transform component and I just try to scale, I'll just show you what happens. That's just not going to work. You know, it's just not going to work. So you need to select all 4, edit mesh, transform component, and then we'll just slightly taper this, just ever so slightly. Not looking for a lot, just a little bit. There we go. Alright, perfect. So now I've got the posts, I'll obviously need to connect them together somehow. And we could, many ways of doing this. We could put some edge loops in here on all of the legs. So try and get them roughly the same height, and then we'll straighten them up so they're exactly the same height in a second. So I've got these edge loops now. I could take these faces and extrude them across and join up the vertex and whatnot. There is a better way, which we'll discuss in just 2 seconds. We'll just straighten these all up so they're all at the same height. So once again, into the foreview, and you can actually see here in the foreview, there's the one on the back leg and there's the one on the front leg, and they're at different heights. So if we grab vertex of all of that lot, so all of these, and once again just use that scale in, you'll see they all go to the same height. Perfect. Right, now let's connect them together. So in this case, I'm just going to take the face. There we go. I'll take this face and let's just make that a bit bigger so you can see what's going on. This one, and I'm just going to hit bridge. Now, if your bridge has come across with lots of segments and it's all wavy and whatnot, my settings are just division 0 and curve type linear. So if you want to make those settings sort of semi-permanent, what you can do, if yours is coming out differently, what you can do is when you select these two next ones, okay, just go down to the marking menu, so shift right click and go bridge faces, pull up its options box, set the options here, and then those options will remain the next time you use it as well. So you know, now when I just hit G to repeat the bridge command, it will use those same options. So let's just get all of these in. Okay, there we go. So these are a bit thick compared to the reference, and again, that's not really an issue. Just take the vertex and scale them downwards. Okay, sorry if your display just jumped, Maya froze up on me, but as I said, scaling those inwards so they match the reference, not really an issue. Now, if these legs are a little too thin, they look a tiny bit too thin compared to the reference, we can do a quick, you know, cheaty way of fixing them. I can just select these two edges here and scale them up a bit. Okay, it's not the neatest way, but it works just fine for our purposes. Okay, now I mentioned earlier that I'd show you a quick way to bevel this, because obviously we're going to want to bevel all the hard edges on this. Now, if it was a more complicated object, I would do this by hand, but as it's quite a simple object, I generally use a script to do this type of beveling. It's called the Facer. I'll bring it up. You can get it on Creative Crash. It's free. It's just under creativecrash.com Maya/scripts/Facer. You'll need to put that into your Maya scripts folder, which under Windows is under My Documents, Maya, your version of Maya, and then scripts. Just download the file from Creative Crash and throw it in there. If you've never used a Maya script before, it's that simple. You'll also need to restart Maya. So if you're following along with me, you'll need to save out this scene and put the script in the script directory and then restart Maya, otherwise it won't work. Once you've done that, in order to activate this particular script, you just type Facer down here. And I mean, I wouldn't do this if I was just going to use it for one tool. I wouldn't make you install this, and indeed you don't have to. If you want to come in and bevel, then you just need to select the hard edges that you want to bevel, like so, and hit the bevel up here, and as you can see, that bevels in, and then you can select the offset you want and whatnot. I mean, we'll be going into bevels in a bit more detail later on, but so, you know, you can do it manually if you so wish. I am going to give this script a try, and I also wanted to bring it up because it's excellent for cleaning up geometry, telling you if there's any problems with geometry. You know, it's good for toggling off displaying normals and face centers and things like this, rather than having to go to display show all the time. It will find holes in your geometry. It will find polygons with more than 4 sides, or sorry, I should say faces with more than 4 sides, n-gons. It's just got a lot of cool stuff in it, so you might want to check out some of the functionality of this. In this case though, I'm just going to run you through this bevel procedure, because as I showed you, you can select the edges and bevel, but we want to bevel all the hard edges. So if I go to display polygons, hard edges, all these highlighted green edges are actually hard, and these are all the ones that we would probably end up beveling. Now this script will do that for you. So if you go to bevel hard edges, enter a minimum angle, I'm just going to leave that at 0 and click go. It's going to look a mess, but don't panic. There you go. As I said, it's going to look a mess. What we've got is a bevel that's far too big, so let's put the offset to 0.002 and see what that did. Okay, now as you can see, all these hard edges here, they've all been beveled, or in this case chamfered, which is just a bevel. If we have a look at it, a bevel with one segment is more of a chamfer. So all of this intricate beveling has been done for us, saved us a ton of time, you know, a ton of mucking about, and you can still, nothing stops you from coming in now and going, okay, well maybe I want, you know, a bevel sort of under here. This edge didn't get beveled. I probably wouldn't bevel it anyway, but if you did want to, nothing stops you from then adding extra beveling. It's just this script really did save tons of time sometimes, you know. so there we go. What we have to do now is maybe put a bit of a decorative facade on the headboard. So I'm just going to click off that Faces script because I don't need it anymore. But please do have an investigate of it. It's a wonderful script. So display, and let's turn off the hard edge display because we don't need it anymore. So I'm just going to go to standard edges. Alright, perfect. So as we did with the wall paneling, I want to put a bit of a decorative sort of headboardy thing up here. So I'm going to nip into the foreview and I'm going to split it in half. So let's use our edge loop tool and let's just get that in the center of the bed. There we go. Okay, now I can actually come in here and do the paneling on the back of the headboard like we did it on the wall paneling. Okay, so let's come in and just select a face here and extrude inwards. And I'm just going to use the scale, so get it about like so. And this will be the basis for our panel on the back. So let's just hit extrude again, G. Okay, and G. And we're just going to do, as I said, the same as we did with the wall paneling, just a different design ever so slightly. So G again, and let's put a square in the middle, G again. Okay, so like so. And now you'll need to do the same on the other side. There are some tools in my 2015, I believe, that will let you do this with symmetry. But I want to keep this so anyone with any version of Maya can follow along. So we're just going to have to go to a bit of extra effort. It's not really that long to do. And I'm just going to eyeball this in. So G. And alright, so that's basically about the same on both sides. Now we'd need to extrude it outwards. So what I would do for this is I would just take these faces and these faces, we can do them all at the same time, and extrude outwards. Okay, then grab these ones and these ones and press G to use the extrude again and just bring them forward a little bit. We're basically just creating sort of a very easy kind of wood panel for the back. And then G, and let's grab these ones too actually. So just pull these out a tad. Okay, so it's not exactly what you call a masterpiece of design. You can spend some more time on it. But actually for me it looks kind of headboardy, and I would now need to come in and bevel the edges. The reason I did this after I used the bevel edges script is because when it's something like this I prefer to have more control over beveling the edges. Just call it personal preference. So I would now just come in and bevel to whatever level that I wanted to. Okay, so 0.1 maybe. And it is actually important to bevel. It really aids the render engine in catching the light on the corners of stuff. So don't skip it. It seems like a pain in the backside sometimes, but it sometimes is the difference between a very, very good looking hard surface model and a very, very bad looking hard surface model. It's just that something simple as that bevel. So there we go. I bevel that one in by hand. It takes about a second and maybe a bit bigger. So, and if we compare these two now, just how they look in the viewport, one is kind of very clearly defined with sharp hard edges and one is just not. So even in the viewport, just putting the bevel on the bed itself, and you see these legs here, they got really nicely defined sort of corners in comparison to, I mean, when we look at this from a distance, this one is kind of much easier to see. It's catching the light a lot better, and that's just because of those little bevels. Right, before we go, I just want to stick a mattress in here. So let's just go polygons, and we'll just use a polycube. Okay, like so. And let's just get a mattressy shape. Now, I've probably mentioned that we'll be doing all the cloth for this bed in Marvelous Designer. So it's going to mean that we need to send this out for simulation. Now, if you have a decent simulation program like Marvelous Designer is, it will automatically triangulate the geometry for you, which is very nice. But we can do that ourselves. It gives us a little bit more control. So let's just finish this mattress and then we can discuss that. So let's just insert a few edge loops. This is just to control the smoothing. Okay, like so. And you'll see they're fairly well spaced apart because, you know, it's a mattress, it should be quite soft in the corners. Alright, and that should do. So when I hit 3 now, that's pretty well smoothed. Alright, so that's our bed basically done. It's just waiting for its cloth, realistically. We could spend some time and effort, you know, putting some design patterns down here, maybe cutting a few trenches in, you know, some nice pleats or whatnot. But to be honest with you, the bed in the picture is actually very basic, and what will make or break our shot in particular will simply be the texturing on the bed and the cloth. So we'll get onto the cloth in this tutorial in a little while. I just want to discuss one thing when kind of modeling for something that's going to be in a simulation. The less geometry you have, the better. So if I take this bed and duplicate it across, okay, the first thing is, you know, for simulation purposes, these bevels are small, but they have a lot of geometry on them, or they create a lot of excess geometry that's never going to be needed in the simulation process. So if you want to, you can go to Window, just go up to the Hypershade and graph the whole object. And actually we'd have to take it off the original because the duplicate won't have history. So we'll call this our high poly object. So this will now be our finished completed bed. Let's go up to this one. And once again, let's have a look in Hypershade. Okay, let's click here. And this will graph the whole object. This is the construction history here of your whole object. So you can see these poly bevels are all the beveling I did on the back. So if I just take all these, and let's get the big bevel that we did here. So I'm just going to remove all the bevels. So really I just find them in the construction history in the Hypershade and hit delete. Now if we look, this object, which will be our high poly object, is beveled and this object is not. Okay, so this is much lower poly. This is good for us when it comes to cloth simulation. Now for this mattress, unfortunately, Marvelous Designer is going to pay no attention to Maya's viewport smoothing. So I'm actually going to have to come down here and hit smooth, which gives us a bit more geometry, but it does give us the same sort of smoothness as this. Alright, we can actually take this one step further. So if we remember that this is our high poly model, this is the one we'll be using at render time. This is the one we'll be using at simulation time, which will be triangulated. I can now bring our facer script back and use auto cleanup on this. And that got rid of all of those edges there, got rid of every extraneous edge that we would actually need. I couldn't model on top of this now. The geometry is hideous. The edge loop tools won't work. There's n-gons and, you know, multiple errors all over it. But that's not going to matter to our simulation program. Once this is triangulated, all those problems will go away. So let's just hit the triangulate button here. And now I've got my bed. It's kind of ready for simulation in the lowest amount of polys possible. So let's just do the same with this. Let's auto clean up and triangulate. Okay, so if I bring up the heads up display for poly count now, so let's go to display, heads up display, and let's go poly count. So if I look at this bed here, this has a total of, let's see, 972 faces. 972 polys. This one has a total of 360. So this one is going to simulate out faster than this one. Okay, so as we'll be doing a few pieces of furniture to simulate in Marvelous Designer, and it might not seem a lot. I mean, this bed, our high poly version, has less, is still very low poly, but just saving a few polygons for a simulation program, something like RealFlow or Marvelous Designer, can save you a lot of time down the road. Okay, so there's our low poly version. There's our version for render. Alright, so I hope you've got something of interest out of this part, and I will see you in the next part when we'll model something slightly more challenging. Okay, thanks for watching.